In the tombs that ancient Egyptians prepared for their deaths, they left a record of how they lived more than 3,000 years ago. But the full meaning of many of the images remains a mystery. In almost every noble's tomb, one image stands out: the blue lotus, a type of water lily which is everywhere. But why should the lotus be associated with the dead? Late in 1999, scientists in Manchester began a series of tests to uncover the secret of the lotus. They were looking in part at the flower itself. But their tests also had another focus: an ancient Egyptian who would have encountered the lotus. A mummy, 3,000 years old. It would turn out that the team would uncover some of the remarkable properties of the lotus and the links between the flower, the afterlife, and sex in ancient Egypt.
People had looked at the pictures in the tombs, and they predicted certain things, but we've actually got evidence now.
Now the speculation can be laid to one side and we can actually go after the hard evidence, the proof, and discoveries such as this are very, very important.
One of the most common images in the tombs is the blue lotus, but its significance has never been fully understood. Might the lotus also be a sexual symbol of some kind? There are hints in the tomb paintings that this is true. Here too, the lotus is often being sniffed. And there is a close association with wine. Wine goblets were often decorated to look like the lotus. And little jars of concentrate are seen being added to the wine. Might these also be derived from the lotus? Was the secret of the lotus that it was a drug which the Egyptians used in much the same way as alcohol? And did they sometimes combine them, soaking the flowers in wine? Was this what lay behind the images in the tombs and on the erotic papyrus? As at Edfu, the lotus appears to have a central importance. Lotus symbols are everywhere. And was it only the gods who were being offered the lotus? If the lotus was a stimulant, might the chantresses have used it too for their energetic dancing?
You do manage to get an idea of the vigour that many of these rituals would be performed with. We have back bends, back flips. You see the long wigs hanging down beneath them. And we can see here a very, very lively scene. These female dancers really shown in an energetic pose. And so music and dance were performed, incense was burnt, perfumes were offered.
Two members of the team, anaesthetist Dave Council and chemist Vic Garner, had now been given samples of Asru's hair and tissue to test.
The evidence for drug use in ancient Egypt, on the whole, is controversial, but it would seem unlikely to me that if the ancient Egyptians had access to these powerful plant drugs, that they wouldn't have used them.
But which plants might they have used? The team planned to take advantage of the newest technology to try to find out. Asru's samples were to be analyzed using an extremely sensitive form of mass spectroscopy, which breaks the sample down into the molecules it contains.
We've had a look at this sample of hair.
The test requires only a minute specimen.
This is the Asru hair and scalp sample. There's some very fine pieces of hair in there.
The team looked at various types of her tissue and at individual hairs. This is a forensic test which Vic Garner's lab has been using to detect drugs in samples provided by the police. Asru is the first mummy that he screened. And her samples revealed an enormous range of substances, from plant oils to henna, with some chemicals still to be identified.
And we found lots of compounds in there, but none of these narcotic compounds. It is possible that we may find compounds that may arise from plant material as well, and that's what's going on at the moment.
Asru appeared free of any known narcotics. But perhaps if the Blue Lotus was being consumed, it actually contained something else. The time had come to take a closer look at what was really in the flower. Finding a flower to test is difficult, since the plants are now very rare and hard to find even in Egypt. One of the few places thought to have the plants, conveniently for Dave Council and Vic Garner, is Stapley Water Garden in Cheshire. Here they have what botanists suspect may be the actual flower revered by the ancient Egyptians.
Oh, looks a bit slippy in here. I'm going to have to be careful, I think.
What's the temperature like down there?
I'll tell you in a sec. It's very pleasant, really. It's quite warm. There's no crocodiles in here, are there? I hope.
Might be cryptosporidium, but...
You're going to pass me the secateurs. Thanks. So shall we take these two then?
Yes, but don't touch the petals. If you hold the stem carefully.
25 years ago, American researchers thought they had detected a form of narcotic, an alkaloid, in the lotus, but that work has never been repeated.
I've never got to sniff a fresh one, so I think this is about as fresh as it gets. So it's quite a nice fragrance, actually. It's very nice.
The Blue Lotus obviously contains something in there. It must be something more than just the appearance of the flower. It must be perfume. It may be that there's some material in there that has a physiological effect.
They decided to test both the chemicals found in the flower itself and in the flower's perfume. They were looking for any substance which could give the flower the effects of a drug. What they actually found was completely unexpected.
Ah, right, okay, so we're getting a lot of noise and no real peaks. So on the basis of that, you would say that there's no material corresponding to that particular alkaloid.
There were no signs of any narcotic, but they made their first important discovery.
Really, we're seeing phytosterols.
These were phytosterols, plant steroids, which often have powerful medicinal effects. And then as they looked more closely, they made a breakthrough.
We kept on with our analyses. We've used a different type of analysis and we've found some material that could have an effect. This is now very exciting.
A different type of liquid-based mass spectroscopy was able to detect molecules too big to show up before. What they found were substances called bioflavonoids. Combing the literature, they looked for other plants with a similar chemical makeup, and it was the 3 bioflavonoids which proved the key.
They're very common in the plant kingdom. They're responsible for a lot of colours and so forth, but they also occur in a lot of preparations that are used to this day, like ginseng and also ginkgo biloba.
Ginkgo biloba is a leaf extract now widely used to stimulate blood flow and improve mental alertness. And when they analysed it, the results were startling.
When we compared the data from the ginkgo extract and the Blue Lotus extract, we found several points of similarity. There are so many points of similarity that we think that the effects of these two materials may also be similar.
The health benefits of ginkgo have been known about for centuries, so might the Egyptians have used the lotus in a similar way? Was this why they might have soaked the flowers in wine? They arranged to see an expert who could tell them exactly what effects the lotus would have had. Liz Williamson is a pharmacognosist, a chemist able to assess the effects on the body of different substances. And it was the complex combination of chemicals found in the lotus which excited her.
Well, I think you've established that the chemistry of the two is fairly similar, particularly around the flavonoid region. And it looks like the lily is even richer in these flavones than ginkgo itself, which suggests that the ancient Egyptians would use it in a similar way to that which we use ginkgo for nowadays. And we are using ginkgo for a lot of different conditions, but the main ones are probably for age-related deteriorations. It's known as a kind of anti-aging herb. It's a free radical scavenger and antioxidant, and it's particularly been shown to be useful in mild Alzheimer's and memory dysfunctions and various conditions where blood flow is at fault, so migraine, tinnitus and so forth, and even that would even involve the sort of Viagra-like effect, which would be just as important for women as men. And it looks like we have, great similarities.
The ability of the lotus to stimulate blood flow suddenly highlighted the missing connection between the lotus and sex.
And I noticed you found a couple of compounds which are phosphodiesterase inhibitors, and that's the way that Viagra works.
Thank you very much.
Good.
So the lotus was not only a general panacea, it was also a natural form of Viagra, potentially the key to both health and sexual vigor. Did this at last make sense of the different ways the lotus had been portrayed? Had the team discovered the secret of the lotus? Vic and Dave decided they had to make one last check. How could they be positive that the lily used by the ancient Egyptians really was the same plant as the one they had sampled at Stapley? And would it have had the same Viagra-like effects? At Kew Gardens, in addition to their collection of modern water lilies, they also have priceless samples of the Egyptian blue lotus itself, dating back to the pharaohs. They agreed that Vic and Dave could take a sample.
The ones that we've been looking at.
Much rounder, isn't it? Much rounder.
In Kew's underground archive are thousands of dried specimens collected from all over the world. Egyptian specialist Nigel Hepper led them to flowers and wreaths which had come from Egyptian tombs.
One with the blue water lily.
There's not much doubt about that, is there?
Oh,
No, it's been taken off the one underneath
Yes.
and
The
remounted.
petals are absolutely exact.
That's from the coffin of Ramses II.
Back in the lab, they could now check if the flower of the pharaohs really had the same chemical fingerprint as the modern plant they tested.
Do you think you've got enough there for the experiment?
Yeah, I can get good results out of 1 milligram of sample.
You can get any results, that would be very useful.
And when they compared the ancient petal from Kew with the modern petal from Stapley, even they were surprised at the match.
This is the trace for the Stapley petal, the modern petal. This is the trace from the Kew petal, the old petal, 2,000 years old. And what we're looking at here is the profile of the phytosterols. And look how similar the profiles are. 2,000 years different, and yet the profiles of these phytosterols, these biologically important materials, are practically identical.
There could be little doubt that the lotus known to the ancient Egyptians would have had the same properties as the modern plant.
It's a very interesting discovery and does have significant ramifications in our understanding of why the ancient Egyptians used the lotus, the image of the lotus, so frequently. And it's interesting now to point to something and say this is obviously where it began. This is one of the means by which they made themselves happy.
From a roundtable discussion, these same scientists all agreed that the wonderful flavonoids of the blue lotus were best conveyed for maximum rejuvenation in a skincare system to brighten sluggish complexions. And now, presenting the Blue Lotus flavonoid, cell therapy skincare.